Hi, and welcome to Reddit Confessions. Let me tell you how I stopped existing, right in front of the woman I married. It wasn't the kiss. It wasn't the way she touched his wrist. It wasn't even her laughing at his jokes like they were the first good ones she'd heard in years. No, it was the moment she saw me and looked away. It was a Friday night party, nothing fancy. Some rooftop thing for her job. She told me I could come if I wanted, like I was optional. Not exactly romantic, but I said yes. Because that's what you do when you still believe there's something left to save. We got there together, but that was the last time we stood side by side. She vanished the moment we walked in, swallowed by a crowd of people who knew her better than I did. I stood near a potted plant for 26 minutes. Yes, I counted, sipping flat soda and pretending to check my email. No one noticed, especially not her. The music started. The crowd shifted. And that's when I saw her, in the middle of the dance floor. In his arms. They weren't dancing. They were orbiting each other. She looked up at him like he was the center of gravity. And for the first time in years, she looked alive. The kind of alive she used to be with me. She threw her head back and laughed. The kind of laugh you feel in your spine. The kind I hadn't heard since, maybe our third anniversary. And then, like the scene was directed just for me, he leaned down, whispered something. She smiled, touched his chest, and turned her body into his. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe. I just watched my wife become someone else's favorite moment. I didn't shout, didn't push through the crowd, didn't demand answers. I walked out. Not a word, not a glance back. I walked out of that building, down 5 blocks, across 2 bridges, and ended up in a 24-hour diner ordering eggs I didn't touch. I stared at the booth across from me, empty, and imagined how she would explain it. Would she even bother? Would I get the classic? It didn't mean anything, but it meant something to me. That night, I didn't go home, didn't call, didn't even cry. I just stopped existing. And in the morning, my phone lit up like it had missed me more than she did. Where are you? Can we talk? I didn't mean for it to look that way. Please, I'm begging you. Come home. But I wasn't sure she meant our home. Because the woman on that dance floor had already moved somewhere I could never follow. I didn't sleep that night. Not in the traditional sense. I closed my eyes a few times, but every time I did, I saw her, twirling in someone else's arms, glowing in a way I hadn't seen in years. I laid there in that cheap motel room, my back to the wall, my shoes still on, phone flipped over on the nightstand. The TV was on but muted. Some cooking show I wasn't watching. Just background noise for a silence I didn't know how to sit with. Around 5:42 a.m., the calls stopped. 23 total. Some were only a few seconds apart. The texts ranged from "Where are you?" to "Please, it's not what you think," to "Come home, so we can talk." But the one that stuck in my chest was the last one. I made a mistake. For words, but somehow they sounded like a scream behind a locked door. I didn't answer. I couldn't. There's something soul-shaking about realizing the person you've built your entire emotional home around might have quietly moved out long before the betrayal ever showed its face. That dance, that wasn't the start. That was just the first time I caught up to where she already was. At 8:11 a.m., someone knocked. Not on my motel room door. That came later, but on my memory. I remembered something small and stupid. The way she used to put cinnamon in my coffee when we first started dating. Just a little. Just enough to make it feel like she knew something about me no one else did. That detail haunted me, because it reminded me that the woman she used to be, the woman I loved, she wasn't completely fake. She was just gone now. Or hiding somewhere I no longer had the key. The knock came at 9:04 a.m. I was in the bathroom, standing over the sink, still in last night's clothes. I didn't jump. I didn't move for at least a minute. Then the second knock, louder, slower. I already knew it was her. I don't know how she found me. Maybe she checked my location history or called Ezra, my cousin, or just guessed. But there she was, Sienna, on the other side of a cheap hollow motel door, holding the pieces of a moment she shattered herself. I opened it. Not all the way. Just enough to see her eyes, red-rimmed and wet, her makeup smudged, wearing a hoodie I hadn't seen in years, one of mine. She didn't speak at first. Just looked at me like I was the one who had cheated. Like I was the one who owed her an explanation for being hurt. "I didn't kiss him," she said, before I said anything. I swear to God, Wallace, I didn't kiss him. That name, my name, it didn't sound right coming from her anymore. Like it was some code word for a version of me she didn't really know anymore. I didn't ask her to explain. I didn't yell. I just stepped back and let her into the room, even though everything in me told me not to. And the first thing she did was sit on the edge of the bed and start crying. Like loudly. Not pretty crying. It was that deep, gut-heavy, shoulder-shaking sob you do when something's really broken. And all I could think was, is she crying because she hurt me, or because she got caught? She told me it was a mistake. That she was drunk. That Craig was just a friend from work who misread the signals. She said she laughed because she was nervous. She said she didn't realize how it looked. She said she missed me. She said she felt lonely even when I was home. She said 100 things that morning. But here's what she didn't say. I'm sorry. She never actually said that. And that silence, that little missing puzzle piece, it screamed louder than all the tears in the world. I didn't tell her I forgave her. I didn't tell her I hated her. I didn't say much at all. I just let her cry. Let her fall apart right there in front of me. But I didn't reach out. I didn't hold her. Because in that moment, I realized something brutal and quiet and life-altering. She wasn't crying because she lost me. She was crying because she thought she might have to try to win me back. And she wasn't used to that. She stayed for hours. Just sat there on the edge of the motel bed, talking like I was a therapist she hadn't paid yet. No makeup, no deflection, just raw emotion. Or at least the version of it she wanted me to see. And for most of that time, I said nothing. Not out of strength, but because I didn't trust my own voice. I didn't want to hear myself sound broken. She kept repeating one phrase in different forms, hoping one of them would stick. It didn't mean anything. But the thing about betrayal is that it's never about the physical act. It's about the decisions that come before it. The 1,000 little moments someone chooses not to protect you. She was at that party with me, and still managed to treat me like I was the ghost of our marriage. That's not something you fix with one motel room confession. She asked to use the bathroom. I nodded. She walked in and shut the door, and I just stared at her purse, the same one she took to the party. I shouldn't have done it. I know. But then again, I shouldn't have needed to. There was no lock on her phone. Not that night. Not anymore. Maybe she thought removing it was a peace offering. Or maybe she underestimated how much I wanted to know the truth more than I wanted to protect myself from it. Her messages with Craig weren't what shocked me. I expected flirtation. I expected emojis and winks and late-night you up texts. And yeah, they were there. But that wasn't the real gut punch. It was the photos, tucked into a hidden folder, not labeled anything suspicious, just notes from HR. And inside, dozens of selfies. Her, him, hotel rooms I didn't recognize. A cocktail bar I'd never been to. One photo, she was wearing the same dress from the party. Only this time she was sitting on his lap, her head tucked under his chin, smiling like she was exactly where she belonged. But the worst part? The timestamps. This hadn't started recently. It had been going on for over 5 months. While I was making excuses for why she came home late. While I was cooking dinner for one and saving leftovers. While I was telling myself that every relationship had dry spells. She didn't just lie. She built a parallel life. And I was the one still clinging to the scraps of the original. I put the phone down before she came out. Wiped the screen like it had burned me. She stood in the doorway with wet hair and asked if I wanted to get breakfast together. That's when I laughed. Not loudly. Not bitterly. Just reflexively. The idea of pancakes felt absurd in the shadow of what I had just seen. I think you should go, I said. Calmly. Like I was giving her the weather forecast. I need space. She looked confused. Like the crying was supposed to reset everything. But I came here to talk, she said. I opened up. Doesn't that count for something? And I just looked at her. Really looked at her. And said, you already said everything. Long before you got here. She didn't argue. She just stood still. Waiting for me to say more. Waiting for me to crack. I didn't. She gathered her things, slowly, like she was hoping I'd stop her. But I didn't move. I watched her walk out of the room the same way I walked out of that party. Quiet, heavy, and with 1,000 thoughts screaming in her silence. The second the door clicked shut, I lost it. Not like in the movies. There was no screaming, no glass smashing, no fists through drywall. I just sat down on the edge of the bed and whispered, I'm such an idiot. Over and over. Until the whisper turned into a sob. Because I wasn't just mourning her betrayal. I was mourning me. The version of me that still believed we were unbreakable. The version that bought flowers for no reason and defended her when my friends raised concerns. The version of me that thought love meant enduring anything, even when it became invisible. It took me 2 more days to say anything. 2 days of pretending to sleep, of forcing food down just to stop the shaking, of rereading those messages on her phone like I was studying for an exam I never wanted to pass. I stayed in that motel room longer than anyone should, slowly losing pieces of myself in silence. I didn't even tell my cousin Ezra where I was anymore. He texted once, "You alive?" And I replied with just a thumbs-up emoji because I didn't have the words to explain that I wasn't sure. But eventually, I knew I had to go back. Not to her. To the house. My house. Our house. Or at least it used to be. When I walked through the front door, it was too quiet. The kind of quiet that feels intentional. Her car was in the driveway, but there were no lights on. I dropped my bag by the stairs and didn't even take off my shoes. I just stood there, staring at the living room, the couch where we used to binge old movies, the shelves I built with my bare hands, the framed wedding photo on the mantel that now looked like it belonged to strangers. Then I heard her voice. From the kitchen, "Wallace." I almost didn't answer. But then I did. "I know." That's all I said. "I know." 2 words, but they landed like a grenade. She came around the corner fast, like she'd been waiting for that moment and dreading it all at once. Her face was pale. Her hands trembled slightly. But she didn't ask what I knew. That told me everything. She sat on the arm of the couch. Not next to me. Just close enough to watch me. I stood. I couldn't sit. Not yet. "I saw the photos," I said. My voice was dry, hollow. "I read the messages. You didn't just have a moment. You had a life with him. You made choices. Repeatedly." She didn't cry. That surprised me. Maybe she was cried out. Maybe she knew tears wouldn't work this time. Instead, she nodded. "Just once. I didn't plan for it to go that far," she said. "But it did. And I didn't stop it. And I'm not going to insult you by pretending it wasn't real." That line caught me off guard. She admitted it. All of it. No twisting. No blame. And somehow, that hurt even more. "Then why are you still here?" I asked. "Why didn't you leave with him? Was he just a toy to play with until you got bored?" Her answer? It wasn't what I expected. At all. "He left me," she said quietly. 3 days before the party. I blinked. "Wait, what?" She looked down at her hands, picking at a loose thread on her sleeve. "Craig. He ended it. Said it was getting too complicated. Said he didn't want to be the reason my marriage fell apart. That night at the party? That was me trying to make him miss me. I didn't know you were watching. I didn't know." She trailed off, but I didn't need her to finish the sentence. Everything clicked. That look in her eyes when she was with him, it wasn't passion. It was desperation. She was trying to keep something that was already gone. I couldn't breathe. "So let me get this straight," I said slowly. "You came home to me because he dumped you." "No," she said, too quickly. "That's not it." I stepped back. "Isn't it? You used me as the fallback. The guy who'd always be there with a soft place to land. But the second someone more exciting showed up, you ran straight into his arms. And now that he's done with you, you come crawling back like nothing happened." She stood up. "That's not fair." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was insane. "Fair? You're going to lecture me about fair?" Then, silence. Heavy. Humid. "I don't love him," she finally whispered. "Yeah," I said, turning away. "But you don't love me either." I walked upstairs, packed a small bag, and left the house again. But this time, I didn't cry. I didn't feel hollow. I felt numb. Because now I knew. I wasn't grieving what I lost. I was grieving the fact that I stayed so long waiting for someone who had already left me emotionally months ago. After I left the house that second time, I didn't go back to the motel. I couldn't. That room had become a graveyard for too many feelings I didn't want to exhume again. Instead, I drove with no direction, windows down, radio off, just letting the noise of the wind drown out the static inside my skull. I didn't have a plan. I just knew I needed air, space, distance. From her. From everything. Around midnight, I ended up outside a 24-hour laundromat 2 towns over. I wasn't there to do laundry. I just needed the fluorescent light and the quiet hum of machines to feel like I hadn't entirely fallen off the edge of the world. I sat in my car for half an hour before checking my phone. Not to read Sienna's new messages, there were 3, but to scroll through the contacts I hadn't thought about in years. And that's when I saw the name. Callum. My oldest friend. Best man at our wedding. The guy who once told me, "If she ever hurts you, I'll hurt her right back." We hadn't talked much recently. Life had pulled us in different directions. Or maybe Sienna had. She never liked how close we were. Said he was too blunt, too suspicious of everyone, including her. So I called him. At 12:42 a.m. To my surprise, he answered on the third ring. Wallace. The way he said my name, half asleep, half worried, cracked something in me. I didn't even say hi. I just muttered, "Can I come over?" 15 minutes later, I was sitting in his garage, wrapped in a blanket, nursing a lukewarm beer, and spilling everything. I told him about the party, the photos, the texts, her showing up at the motel, her confession, Craig dumping her before the party, the fact that I felt like a used hand-me-down version of a man and still somehow didn't hate her the way I should. He listened, quietly, no interruptions, just stared at the floor and let me talk myself into a spiral. But when I finally stopped, he didn't say, "I'm sorry." He didn't offer sympathy. He said, "I should have told you months ago." The room spun. What? Callum stood up, started pacing. He looked guilty, nervous, like someone holding a grenade and trying to decide whether to throw it or let it explode in his hands. "I saw them together once," he said. "Back in April. It was at that art show Sienna invited me to, remember? You were supposed to come, but canceled because of work. I went alone. And I saw her. With him." I just stared at him. "You what?" He rubbed the back of his neck. They weren't holding hands or kissing or anything, but it was obvious. The way she was looking at him. The way she smiled when he leaned in. I knew something was off. I confronted her in the parking lot afterward. Told her to cut it out. Told her if she didn't, I'd tell you. I could feel my jaw clench. And she begged me not to. Swore it wasn't serious. Said it was just emotional. Said she'd end it. I stood up. "And you believed her?" He shook his head slowly. "No, I didn't. But I wanted to give her the chance to fix it without blowing up your life." I was shaking. Not from rage. From betrayal layered on top of betrayal. "So you let me keep sleeping next to her every night, thinking I was crazy for feeling the distance, while you knew?" Callum looked ashamed. "I thought I was protecting you." "No," I said, backing away. "You protected her. And she wasn't even yours to protect." I left his house without finishing the beer. Drove aimlessly again. I wasn't just furious. I felt erased. Like everyone around me had been living in a story I didn't even know I was in. A subplot. A side character in my own marriage. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed in my car in a parking lot near a gas station and watched the sunrise behind a strip mall. The light made everything look too normal. As if nothing had exploded. As if my life wasn't being gutted behind closed doors and polite lies. I wanted to scream. But instead, I texted her. Just 5 words. "We're not done. Not yet." Because for the first time in this entire spiral, I knew I wasn't going to keep being silent. I wasn't going to let her control the story. She owed me the truth. And now, I was going to dig until I got it. The moment I hit send on that text, "We're not done. Not yet." I felt a strange shift inside me. Not power. Not closure. Just motion. Like I had stopped sinking for the first time and was finally swimming towards something. I didn't know what I was going to say when I saw her. All I knew was that I couldn't let her sit comfortably in whatever version of events she had built for herself. Not when I'd spent the last week drowning in every memory she ever corrupted. She didn't reply to the text right away, but 4 hours later, she sent back. "Okay. When?" No begging this time. No crying. Just a word. And somehow, that scared me more than all the rest. Because when someone stops defending themselves, it usually means they're about to tell the kind of truth that cuts too deep to decorate with excuses. We agreed to meet at a neutral spot. Not the house. Not the motel. Not even a coffee shop. I suggested the lake trail outside town. A place we used to walk before everything got complicated. Back when we held hands without thinking. Back when she used to stop me just to say she was happy. I hadn't been there in over a year. I guess I didn't want to taint it. But now, everything was tainted. She arrived before me, sitting on the same bench where she once told me she wanted to grow old with me. Her hair was tied back, no makeup, sweater hanging loose on her shoulders. She looked like someone who hadn't been sleeping either. I sat down beside her without a word. Just air between us. Heavy, fragile air. "I talked to Callum," I said. She didn't react. Didn't even blink. Just nodded slightly, like she'd expected it. "I know he saw you," I continued. "I know he warned you. I know you promised him it was over." Still, she didn't speak. And then I said the one thing I hadn't planned to say until that moment. "I want you to tell me the whole truth. All of it. Not what you think I can handle. Not the version you practiced. Just the truth. The real one. For once. She stared ahead, watching a group of ducks float lazily near the shore. Then she said, "It wasn't just Craig." I turned my head slowly. What? She still wouldn't look at me. There were two others. Before him. One lasted a few weeks. The other was longer. My mouth went dry. I tried to speak and nothing came out. I'd prepared myself for pain. For lies. For half-truths. But I hadn't braced for this. How long? I finally asked, my voice hoarse. The first was last summer. The second started around Christmas. I couldn't breathe. I felt my spine lock up, my fingers curl into fists in my lap. Why? I whispered. Why would you do that? What did I do? She looked at me now, her eyes full of something I couldn't place. Not regret. Not guilt. Something older. More tired. You stopped seeing me, she said. I blinked. What does that even mean? You looked at me. You lived with me. But you didn't see me anymore. Not who I was becoming. Not who I was struggling to be. You kept loving the version of me I grew out of. I almost laughed, but it caught in my throat. So, because I didn't compliment your haircut or take you salsa dancing, you decided to turn our marriage into a revolving door for strangers? She flinched. That's not fair. No, I said coldly. What's not fair is that I loved you so loudly you didn't even hear it anymore. She wiped her cheek, and for once, I didn't care whether it was a real tear or a performance. I thought it would make me feel something again, she said. I thought if I felt wanted, I'd remember how to want you. But it just made everything worse. And that was the moment, right there, when I realized something that shattered me more than anything she could have confessed. She hadn't just betrayed me. She had been searching for a reason to stay, and kept failing. That's what all of it was. Not a series of accidents. Not even lust. It was desperation. Her trying to find in other people what she no longer found in me, while still keeping me around in case she changed her mind. Why didn't you just leave? I asked softly. If you were that unhappy, why not leave me? Her voice cracked. Because you didn't deserve that. I stood up. My knees wobbled. My heart was burning cold inside my chest. No, I said. What I didn't deserve was this. She didn't follow me as I walked away. Didn't call after me. And I didn't look back. Because I knew if I did, I might stay. And I was done staying where I wasn't chosen. When I walked away from that bench, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't feel anything, which terrified me more than sadness ever could. It was like my heart had finally gone into survival mode. Numb wasn't peace, it was frostbite. I drove home. Not to our home, just the house. That's how I saw it now. A building filled with furniture and echoes. I unlocked the door and stood in the entryway like a visitor. Nothing looked different, but it all felt different. The air was heavier, the silence more personal. It was like even the walls were holding back tears. I walked through the kitchen like I didn't belong there, even though my name was still on the deed. I sat at the table, staring at a bowl of fruit we never touched and a candle she always forgot to blow out. And I started writing. Not a letter. Not some grand, dramatic note. Just a short message. Direct. Meant for her eyes only. I folded it into an envelope and left it on the kitchen table, right where I knew she'd find it. I didn't pack much. Just a suitcase with the essentials and a box of old photos I couldn't bear to let her keep. Then I walked out the door and locked it behind me, not knowing if I'd ever walk through it again. The note said, I loved you completely, and you left pieces of yourself everywhere, but here. I won't stay broken while you search for what you already had. I turned off my phone, not because I was afraid of her response, but because I didn't want to give her the option to rewrite her story again. I needed distance, clarity, maybe even silence. I stayed with Ezra again. He didn't ask questions. He just handed me a beer and turned on the game like nothing was happening, which, honestly, was the kindest thing anyone could have done. But 2 days later, the silence broke. Not from her. From a lawyer. A clean, polite email arrived in my inbox. Dear Mr. Rayner, I represent your wife, Sienna Rayner. She wishes to begin discussions for an amicable separation. That word, amicable. As if this had been some mutual agreement. As if we both just woke up and decided to casually dissolve nearly a decade of love, time, and shared toothbrushes. No acknowledgement of the damage. No apology. Just paperwork. But the kicker? Attached to the email was a timeline. A neatly drafted proposal of when she'd move out, how we'd split assets, and what she expected from me in the interim. No conversation. No face-to-face discussion. She had skipped over the emotion and gone straight into logistics. Like I was a roommate she'd outgrown. I stared at that email for almost an hour before I finally replied. Just one line. Tell your client the man she betrayed is not her business partner. He's the husband she abandoned. And that was it. No further reply. Not that day. Not the next. But then came the package. It arrived at Ezra's door 2 mornings later. No return address. Just my name, scribbled in handwriting I hadn't seen in a long time. Back when she still wrote birthday cards instead of sending emojis. Inside were 2 things. First, her wedding ring. Second, a flash drive. There was no note. No explanation. Just those 2 items. I held the ring for a long time. It still had the faint indentation where it had lived on her finger. I could see scratches on the inside. Little nicks from years of life. I used to think that was a good sign, that it meant a ring had lived through something real. I plugged in the flash drive. It wasn't photos or videos. It was a recording, a voice memo, one she had clearly made after I left. I sat there in silence, listening to her voice crack as she said the words she couldn't say to my face. Words about loneliness, about her regrets, about how she kept trying to fill the absence between us with anything but honesty. She said she knew it was over long before the cheating started, but that cheating made her feel like someone, even if it cost her everything. She didn't beg for forgiveness. She didn't ask to fix it. At the end, she just said, "You always deserved someone who could fight for you the way you fought for me. I hope you find her. I really do." Then the recording stopped. I sat there, still holding the ring, unsure if I felt vindicated or just hollow. Because in that moment, I realized something even worse than betrayal. She had loved me once, and she let that love rot in silence. Not because she hated me, but because she didn't know how to be honest when the love started dying. And maybe neither did I. I never responded to the recording. There wasn't much left to say. I kept the ring in a drawer for a while, not out of sentiment, but because throwing it away felt too easy, too final. It wasn't the symbol that broke me. It was the silence, the neglect, the slow erosion of 2 people who once swore they'd always be each other's home. A few weeks passed. The legal stuff moved quickly. I signed the papers without a dramatic scene. She did too. No back and forth. No last-minute confessions. Just dotted lines and quiet endings. Strangely, it felt peaceful. Like we'd both finally let go of something neither of us had been holding properly for years. And then, life moved forward. Not quickly. Not like in movies. There was no montage of me suddenly thriving with upbeat music and new hobbies. Healing didn't come in a wave, it came in whispers. Small wins. Mornings where I made coffee and didn't think of her. Nights where I laughed, genuinely laughed, at something stupid Ezra said. A Sunday where I cleaned the whole place just because it felt good to care about my own space again. I started therapy. I wrote a lot. Pages and pages of thoughts I never planned to share. I found out I still had dreams, not just memories. That I still had the capacity to be whole. That I didn't need to be chosen to have value. And then one day, months later, I bumped into someone at a bookstore. Literally, spilled coffee on her coat. I apologized like a mess. She laughed it off like it was the most human thing in the world. Her name was Clara. She asked what I was reading. I asked what she was avoiding by wandering the aisles at 9 p.m. on a Friday. We talked for an hour. Then 2. No expectations. No pressure. Just real. We're still talking. And no, this isn't some happily ever after, tied up with a bow. I'm not rushing into anything. I'm not looking to replace one chapter with another. But I smile now. For no reason. And that means everything. Sienna texted me once since the divorce. Just one message. "I hope you're doing okay." I didn't reply. Not out of bitterness. But because I was finally more than okay. I didn't get her back. I got myself back. And that was the best possible ending. Thank you for following my story here on Reddit Confessions. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a moment where walking away led to something better? Drop your story in the comments. I promise, someone out there needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe to Reddit Confessions for more true stories about heartbreak, healing, and everything in between. Your voice matters here. Thanks for listening.